translated into English and widely known in my country. And there he talks about worldliness as something the Christian must be. And in the ethics he talks about a sense of Wirklichkeit. Wirklichkeit, Weltlichkeit. These are things that sometimes pious Christians want to have nothing to do with.
That's the same today.
I asked Fabian, when you were in the Gestapo prison in Berlin with Dietrich, you had occasion to observe him near the end of his life, after he was taken from Tegel in the fall of 1944 into that group of small group of political prisoners. And I said to him, 7 or 8 years ago when he was in America, was Dietrich Bonhoeffer still Herr Pastor Bonhoeffer in those days, or was he not? And he had been a very quick answerer with a beautiful cigar. He was Gerichter at this point. Fabian was very berühmt and so forth. And he was smoking in this interview this beautiful cigar. Fabian. Yeah. And every time, however, one would put a question, he'd quickly respond. But at this point, when I asked him, was he still Herr Pastor Bonhoeffer, he stopped and he smoked for what seemed like a week. And then he said, well, you could talk to him about anything. That says a lot about what we usually think of a pastor. You don't speak to him openly about some things. But then he said, but yes, he was Herr Pastor Bonhoeffer. Even in 1944 and 1945, he was worldly and he was still Christian at the same time. In some identifiable way, there was a holy worldliness, whatever, Heilige Weltlichkeit, in Dietrich's experience. Now, I wonder what you would say about those matters. Was the Bonhoeffer family one where piety, sobriety, all of these serious matters constantly prevailed, or was it something different? Well, how do you remember Dietrich, for example? Was he such a serious man?
No, not. I didn't feel that he was a pastor when I spoke with him and when we made music together. So, not at all. This is the problem, which is still the problem of the church of today. Yeah. In Germany, the official church still today feels he wasn't killed as a Christian, but he was killed as a politician. They don't understand that his action, his political actions were done by faith. He felt he has to do that, though he becomes a sinner, because God demands from him to work in the world for other people, by love. If you do it really by love for other people, to save them from the devil, and to have to become a sinner and have to hope on the forgiveness of God. They don't understand that it was not a a simple politically decision from him, not a political calcul, but all what he did was done feeling I am under the eyes of God. And that's, you can't explain that somebody who doesn't know him, because that is very, very seldom. This kind of living in the world as a man under God, in the world, to feel responsible for what is going on in the world. Also today we have these opinions that Schuster, bleib bei deinem Leisten, Kirche predige über Gott, nicht wahr? What is the proverb in America for Schuster, bleib bei deinem Leisten?
Leave the politics to the politicians and stick to the preaching of the Word of God, whatever. The black, white, Christians are one thing, politics is another.
The task for the priest or for the pastor is to console the souls, to help the souls to overcome what they have to experience, whatever it is, illness or war or whatever. You have to take it from God as it is your task to arrange yourself with that and to save your soul clean from sins. Yeah.
And this is all internal. Then it's an inner life.
Yeah. And Dietrich came not easily, after very strong and hard meditations, to that result that I cannot stand by when others, millions of innocent people are killed, while I want to save my soul clean from sins. That is not pious. But this is a consequence which is not easy to make propaganda for it, because it is so easily to misuse also. The temptation to misuse that and to proclaim this decision for other things which really can only be judged by politicians and not by any housewife. In one of the last podium discussions which I had in Bonn, somebody from the publicum, from the auditory, mentioned, nichts ist gefährlicher als Aktivität ohne Kenntnisse. Nothing is more dangerous than activity without real knowledge. I answered her, that's true, but there might be situations where it is more terrible not to action, having the knowledge. But both things must be, the knowledge before you act.
The hard work
and they had the knowledge. This group had the knowledge about Hans von Dohnanyi.
Certainly Hans and Klaus and Rudiger and others in that circle had much knowledge. Hans kept his diary, his Tagebuch, with entries day by day, where clear violations of law had been committed in Hitler's name and by Hitler personally. And this was something, I take it, which Klaus was very much concerned about as well, in light of what you say.
Yeah, about what made the situation more difficult was that we were in a war. And many people, I have friends like a relative who was a very integrated.
Had great integrity, we say. Had great integrity.
Of high integrity, who said, we have at first to win the war and then we will aufräumen. But at first you can't change the horses while there is a thunderstorm.
Yes. Yes.
That was one of the problems.
Which is maybe a repeating almost a decade later of what the German nationalists were saying in the earliest 30s. We can't get rid of Hitler now, we must use him. And here 10 years had passed, many things had happened,
Yeah.
and people are still, in a way,
Yeah.
saying a similar thing.
Yeah.
We must get through the war,
Yeah.
and then better. But some Germans, certainly in the war, one view of the resistance within Germany is that it was sort of a last effort on the part of Germans to salvage their own fortune. After all, the war was already, in practical terms, lost to Germany after a certain point. When the United States came in, so much material and manpower was ranged against Germany. She may protect herself very expertly, but eventually attrition wears her out, and she must finally lose. And it's only then, some interpreters say, that the resistance began because people in the know said, well, we've lost it, let's make the best of the best deal we can.
No, that's not true. That's not true. Opposition was much earlier, but it was always, you see, the experience with the Dolchstoßlegende von 1980,
yeah?
That was said again and again. And ich habe jetzt den Faden verloren. Ich wollte etwas Wichtiges sagen. Stoppen Sie mal einen Moment. Saying that was the feeling. In a war, there's just one possibility to keep together. Yeah, all other things are traitorous. Yeah?
Yes.
And but when Dietrich got this terrible, difficult task from Hans Dohnanyi to ask over Chichester, even Churchill, if the Allied forces would agree to resign on the unconditional surrender if there is another and an honorable government. This mission was a failure because Churchill reacted, that's their problem if they want to make a coup d'etat, that's not ours. They can't get guarantees in before they do it. They have to do it or do it not, but they can't get guarantees. And this was very understandable from Churchill. But the reaction of the officers here, of the generals, was, well, the unconditional surrender we can have anyhow. We have not to break an oath for that.
Right. So why bother? You know, there was a way then in which your husband and others were very much involved much earlier, much before such an interpretation as I just mentioned would permit in the resistance. Already before 1936, Hans was organizing and talking, certainly, putting the first steps into place.
Where did he talking? With whom?
With people in certain circles, with the people in the ministry.
In Germany?
Yes, within Germany, yes.
Yeah.
And not yet outside,
Yeah.
perhaps. 38, 39, the Vatican contacts and other things come up. But he was certainly taking the steps, so that the resistance certainly cannot be rightly said to have originated in 1942 or 1943. There were men such as Hans and others who were clearly working in this direction long before even the war began, before it ever began, and before even Hitler came to power, as you said. Klaus was working in this direction and talking clearly about what must be done. there is an interesting point that you raise. Dietrich was entrusted with a very sensitive and special contact through the Bishop of Chichester, who was visiting in Sweden, a neutral country, the Allied governments through the Churchill War Cabinet, in which Anthony Eden sat as Minister of Foreign Affairs, and making some effort to get some sign of encouragement, so that the last hesitating people in Germany who were necessary to make the chances of the putsch for success more likely, these men, hesitating, maybe would, as you say, with this encouragement now break over. But after all, we don't want to dishonor our oath if we get the same either way. We have sworn absolute, unquestioning allegiance to Hitler as the Fuhrer, to his person. And we don't have to take back our oath if we get unconditional surrender either way. What's the difference? The resistance, however, somehow went on. One could say, even after its moment to strike with the most probability of success had long passed. Probably when von Schlabrendorf put the bombs aboard Hitler's aircraft, everything was ready. The key persons were in place, as later they would be reassigned, and it was just very difficult to put things back together again. But at that time, for one reason or other, the bombs did not explode, and everything had to be called off. There were a couple of other efforts at the War Museum in Berlin, and with this young man who was to model an overcoat, but none of these actually produced Hitler at the appropriate moment when everything was ready. This was before D-Day. It was before any such time had come. But after, years after this, is when Graf von Stauffenberg actually forced through the move on 20 July 1944. And most people, even in the resistance, who were willing, like Graf von Stauffenberg himself, to carry through these actions, knew that the chances for success were by then slim. Yet they felt it was absolutely necessary, in spite of the fact that, in terms of a political calculation, in terms of practicality, they had little chance for success. Nevertheless, they felt they were absolutely required to act on 20 July 1944. Why do you think was that?
By historical reasons and moral reasons. The world had to see there was resistance. Otherwise there was no chance that we ever could be recognized as an honorable people in the world. If there would have never been a sign that there was resistance, I don't know, maybe it's wrong, but they felt we have to do it by that reason. Maybe there's so much Unrecht in der Welt, so much success of devilish acting, maybe they were wrong with this idea. And the reasons for recognition afterwards are quite from a different sort. If a people is of interest for business, then it will be recognized. Look what we do today with the Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need them as a NATO state, and there are cruelty every day. There are tortures in the prisons, terrible, like in Auschwitz or so.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody asks for, and nobody will judge the whole Turkey for that cruel months, because they are needed. You can business make with them, and you need them in the NATO, and so is the world. And so far, maybe this idea, which was put in words by Tresco, we have to do it, dass die Welt, the world sees there was resistance.
Mm-hmm.
It was very idealistic. But my children today, they have another point of view. They said if there was so little chance as there was, that it was really better they had served their lives for today. We need them today.
Mm-hmm.
Look what we have today in the politics,
Mm-hmm.
what persons.
These men who lost their lives in a pointless cause.
In it?
A cause which was pointless, had no effect,
Yeah.
was ineffective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should have stayed around and tried to put Germany back together again.
Yeah.
Today they're needed.
Yeah.
But there is something there that Tresco expresses, huh? And I take it that Klaus shared that view.
Yeah. But of course you hoped for success.
Of course you hope for success,
Yeah,
even against all odds.
He was not the type to want to be a martyr.
Mm-hmm.
Of course he hoped for success.
Mm-hmm. Even on slim chances, however, it still had to be done. What they did at this point,
Yeah.
for the sake of the record, for the sake of other people's knowledge.
For the rehabilitation of Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Kann man das sagen? Rehabilitation?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Rehabilitation.
Yeah.
There are, I think Eberhard and Renata this year have just published the Letzte Briefe in Widerstand. And I am struck there by how this idealistic tone, which gives a completely unpractical almost dimension, factor to the view of the writers of these letters. They are idealistic, and because they are idealistic, they are absolutely, unqualifiedly committed to doing what they see as having to be done. And this takes one, I think, to Grund, back to the basis. And the basis, finally, is whatever one believes in. It's a matter of Glauben.
Yeah.
I don't know what your own opinion of the church in those times is, or of what the Christian faith means. But it's interesting already very early, Klaus used the term the devil to identify Hitler and his party members.
Mm-hmm.
Was the church very important, do you think, in the circle of the Bonhoeffer family, not just your own, but the larger circle?
No, not at all.
Mm.
No.
You said that when you talked to Dietrich, even though he was a pastor, You didn't feel like you were talking to a pastor. You thought you were talking to another.
Yeah, but
human
once
being.
I asked him, how is that with your Christians? I had asked him, how is that with you Christians? You do not want to kill. But if another one does it, you agree? Concerning to Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked a very long time through the window out in the ciel, in the heaven, and did not answer. He has given later on the answer with that picture of the man who observes a madman who runs with his car, a fool, and it's not enough for a Christian to console the
Victims.
victims and to bind the wounds. But you have to try to push off the driver from the wheel. That was the late answer to my question.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came after long meditations, I'm sure, not easily, to the result which I told about.
Mm.